As we had touched upon in our last video, there are rumors going around that following Roman Reigns' eventual return to the WWE as a heel, Vince McMahon is reportedly planning to have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson return to the company for one final run, to eventually face off against Roman Reigns at next year's WrestleMania 37 event. According to a new leaked backstage rumor, The Rock had informed Vince last year that the only way he would consider making a return to WWE in an in-ring capacity was if he was given a feud against his cousin Roman, and it now looks as though McMahon is going to be giving The Rock what he wants for his last run in the WWE before permanent retirement. We have been told that a big motivator for trying to get The Rock to return in 2020 is due to the very poor Raw and SmackDown viewership over the past several months, and McMahon believes the show needs some big name value like The Rock to get fans watching again initially, and Vince hopes that once the fans tune in again to see The Rock's return, they will continue watching on a weekly basis, with the WWE's creative team reportedly planning to put on better shows for the rest of 2020 to keep the new fans entertained. Both Big Cass and Enzo Amore's careers in the WWE ended the same way at different points in time, with both Cass and Enzo eventually getting released from their contracts for various behavioral issues. But like most of you are probably aware, a release or firing doesn't mean the end of the road for superstars like Big Cass and Enzo Amore, and quite often an opportunity presents itself down the line for a fired wrestler to return and revitalize their career. And if a new leaked backstage rumor proves to be true, that looks like it could be the case for Cass and Amore in 2020. We have been told that Vince is considering having Enzo Amore and Big Cass return to the WWE sometime in the fall of this year, with McMahon believing both stars have taken measures to correct their bad behavior and habits and are deserving of a second chance, especially for Big Cass, who had completely turned his life around not long ago with the help of Diamond Dallas Page and his yoga program. Big Cass is now in the best shape of his career, and Enzo Amore certainly has claims for the same compliment as well, with Enzo trying to add lots of new muscle to hopefully make himself stand out from the rest of the pack once he returns. The WWE apparently believe the tag team divisions on both shows, Raw and SmackDown, need some more talent, and while Enzo Amore and Big Cass never ended up holding the titles during the previous run, one source has mentioned that following their rumored return, Enzo and Cass would immediately be getting an opportunity at either of the brand's tag team titles, and in all probability, win the gold in their return match. While both Enzo Amore and Big Cass have the desire to each win major singles titles in the WWE, we have been told that McMahon will be keeping the two stars together for the foreseeable future to hopefully revitalize the WWE's tag team division. When fans think of former WWE superstars who would most likely never return to the company, there's no doubt that Scott Steiner would be at the forefront of most fans' list, after the former WCW World Champion seemingly burned every bridge connected to WWE, considering Scott Steiner has always had the tendency to be very outspoken when it comes to the WWE, with Steiner constantly criticizing the company and the way it's run. However, quite shockingly, there are new rumors going around that Vince is apparently willing to try and mend the relationship between Scott Steiner and WWE, with McMahon rumored to be planning a Scott Steiner return in 2020. For those of you unaware, the WWE reportedly have a lot of interest in eventually signing Scott's nephew Bronson Reich Steiner, the son of Rick Steiner, who is currently a football player for the Baltimore Ravens, with Bronson apparently eventually planning on transitioning into pro wrestling full-time, with Bronson spending a few years before the NFL as a wrestler on the independent wrestling scene. But as you would expect, Scott has been very critical of the possibility of Bronson joining WWE due to his own poor relationship with the company, with Steiner hoping for Bronson to perhaps join AEW in the future. So Vince is hopeful that if he is able to get on Scott's good side over the next year or so and mend the relationship, he'll be more open to his nephew eventually joining the WWE. We've been told that while Triple H hated the idea of Scott Steiner returning at first, he has apparently warmed up to the idea somewhat. And apparently, Scott and Rick Steiner are reportedly being considered for the Hall of Fame next year in 2021. While it's highly unlikely that Scott Steiner would return to have many actual matches due to his age and other health-related issues, Vince believes Scott could have a couple very entertaining segments with some of the WWE's up-and-coming superstars to help increase the ratings and viewership for Monday Night Raw specifically. Let us know your thoughts on the possibility of Scott Steiner returning to the WWE, and if he was to return in 2020, do you think Scott should wrestle a few matches or only appear in a couple segments leading up to his eventual Hall of Fame induction along with his brother Rick? We had reported in one of our previous videos on the WWE's plans to bring back the all-women's Evolution pay-per-view event in early fall 2020, and as we had discussed, the WWE are planning a couple big returns to make Evolution 2 a must-see show this year, with it firstly being rumored that Ronda Rousey is penciled in to make a big return at the show. However, if a surprising new leaked backstage rumor proves to be true, Vince McMahon may be planning another major return for Evolution this year, with that return being former Divas champion AJ Lee. For those of you unaware, AJ Lee has stated in multiple interviews that she would be well open to the idea of returning to WWE if the right offer and scenario presented itself, and while the company failed to convince AJ Lee to return for the last Evolution pay-per-view event, it appears as though AJ is legitimately considering making a return this year, as she has not only gotten herself into great shape, we have been told that AJ once again has that itch to get inside the squared circle. Although it's still unknown whether or not AJ would be returning to the WWE full-time, or just for Evolution 2, there's no doubt many fans would be very happy to see AJ Lee back inside a WWE ring, but one of our sources has mentioned that Vince is hopeful that AJ would consider returning on a more regular basis, with McMahon apparently wanting to book Sasha Banks versus AJ Lee for the Raw Women's Championship following AJ's return. In all likelihood, AJ would probably be signed to a deal comparable to Edge, with AJ appearing on TV fairly regularly, but wouldn't wrestle as often as a company's full-time talent, to essentially reduce the wear and tear while also keeping AJ Lee's appearances more special seeming for fans. For many years now, fans have wanted to see Sting return to the WWE for one final match against dream opponent The Undertaker, and while it seemed as though Vince McMahon soured on the idea and decided against doing it, it looks as though Vince may be planning a bit of a compromise for fans in 2020. According to a new leaked backstage rumor, the WWE are reportedly considering having Sting return alongside The Undertaker to form a tag team on Friday Night SmackDown, in an effort to boost ratings for the show and satisfy the fans who have wanted to see the two living legends in the same ring at the same time, with Undertaker apparently being the one to pitch the idea to creative recently. And the rumored plan is that Sting and Undertaker would eventually end their partnership after a short reign as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, with Taker and Sting then turning their attention to facing one another at next year's WrestleMania 37 event, in a career versus career match. And as you would likely expect, The Undertaker would apparently win the match, with Sting then retiring from in-ring competition for good, whereas for The Undertaker, Vince still has plans to utilize the dead man in various matches for the next decade, so Taker isn't retiring anytime soon.